Let's get the thoughts of the former Brexit Secretary, Conservative MP David Davis. Good morning to you, David.
Good morning.
Good morning. Your reaction, first of all, to that very shocking news this morning that Donald Trump, only a month before the presidential election, has contracted coronavirus.
Yeah, it's terrible for him. I and his wife. I hope that, bear in mind, he would probably categorise in this country at least as a risk category. He's in his 70s?
74, yep.
He's 74. He's not thin. So all the sort of the sort of risk categories that point at it being dangerous will be very serious for him. So, obviously he'll get the best possible assistance and medical assistance in the world, but nevertheless, it's still a frightening thing, I think. So, I hope he recovers quickly.
There have been quite a lot of glee from an awful lot of those on social media, particularly Twitter. A lot of people talking about karma, given that this is a man who publicly derided this as a hoax virus, not real, and mocked people wearing masks, even sort of questioned Biden wearing a mask so much during the debate on Tuesday night. What do you make of that reaction?
Well, my response to them is get a grip. You shouldn't risk or wish a dangerous disease on anybody. And so, sort of grow up is my answer to that, I'm afraid.
And we all remember when we were in lockdown, much darker times a few months ago, when Boris Johnson was ill and he was then isolating and then, of course, went into hospital, and then we found out he was in ICU. It was a very scary time for our country. I think the entire nation was sort of waiting every morning to get the latest news and hope that the Prime Minister, whether they'd voted for him or not, was well. A very scary time for Americans, heading just a month away into a presidential election as well.
Yeah, dead right. These people who are in the public eye, like our Prime Minister, like the President, and many others for that matter, people feel closer to them than and they know more about them, and they can imagine. It ceases to be a load of statistics. It ceases to be an R number. It ceases to be all those other things. It suddenly becomes somebody human and personal, and that you can imagine. So of course it's scary. Of course it's worrying, as indeed it was with when Boris had it. Once somebody you know about in detail has this, it's much easier to imagine it yourself. I think most people don't have any imagination about what this would mean for themselves until it gets close, and this is one way of that happening.
Indeed. Well, okay, let's turn our attention to what we originally invited you to talk about, and this is, of course, the news yesterday that Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, a big press conference she did yesterday, just as I came off air, saying that she had sent a letter of formal notice to the British government yesterday morning that the EU is taking a legal action against the UK over the passing of the Internal Market Bill, which overrides the Brexit divorce treaty, and that legal action will continue. Now, of course, it emerged very soon after that legal action is brought by the EU against member states all the time, including those who are very upset about that Internal Market Bill: Germany, France, Ireland, and the others. What do you make of this? Is this just a bit of grandstanding, a bit of theatre, or is this something we should take seriously?
Well, I don't think it's something we should take terribly seriously. Look, there are. The first thing to understand is this was going to happen. Even if the EU didn't bring it, some member of the EU might have brought it, or even a citizen of the EU might have brought it. It was going to happen. The moment a minister said we're doing something illegal, which I actually think he was wrong about, but the moment he said that, this was going to happen. Now, this could be one of two things. It could be a routine first step, just as when you're doing any legal process, your lawyer says you're going to do this by this day and so on. It could be that. And that's what Mark Rutte, the Prime Minister of Holland, of the Netherlands, said yesterday. Or, and I think more likely, it's a little bit of posturing. It's a part of the negotiating process, and it's an attempt to put a little bit more pressure on us. The thing to understand in all of this, and you don't really get it in the British press, you don't get the understanding of the British press, is that the European Union will use every single lever available to them. Good, bad, or indifferent. It will use every single leader. That's what we've seen the last few years. All sorts of wrong assertions, all sorts of claims are not true, all sorts of posturing. And that's why I think we should just ignore it. The truth is it will only be relevant in the event of no deal. And under those circumstances, I'm not at all sure, frankly, how much leverage the European Union and its courts have over us. So, frankly, I'd shrug it off and say, well, so what? Let's get on with the negotiation.
And in terms of those negotiations, Lord David Frost, our negotiator, Michel Barnier, the EU's chief negotiator, in Brussels today. We are fast approaching that deadline that Boris Johnson imposed, 15th of October at the next EU summit. That's fast approaching, just 13 days away. We normally go into, 2 weeks of these so-called tunnel talks where everyone turns off their phones and actually gets down to the technical detail of these talks. Are you hopeful that sometime over this weekend, or maybe even later today, we are going to hear an announcement?
No, not necessarily. I mean, look, I understand the Prime Minister putting a deadline on it, but the real deadline is the 31st December, and even that could get stretched. So, no, I think what will happen is we'll have more posturing. We're getting better. We're getting closer. There's no doubt about that. You can actually see it and you can sense it. And to be honest, I'm a big fan of David Frost. I think he's playing a blinder. I think he's done this exactly right from the beginning. The stance, the sort of tough-minded stance he's taken has been right all along. And it's beginning to show results. But you're still going to get backsliding. You're still going to get individual members of the European Union say, no, we want to hang on to our fish. Or, no, we can't allow them to have the right to state aid or whatever. All those things will surge and go away and surge and go away and surge and go away. So my hunch, I hope we do it in the next 15 days, or 13 days. But my hunch is it'll still be going afterwards. And although we've let them put the deadline down, truth is, if they came back the day after the deadline and said, actually, all right, we want to talk again about this thing, are we going to say no? I don't think so.
Finally, you were one of the rebels, the Tory rebels, threatening on the issues of the government extending their emergency powers. In fact, we've got you to thank. There was even a vote on this, given that the government originally wanted 2 years for the powers before they had to be reviewed.
Right.
You were opposed on the 6-month amendment. Thank you for that, by the way. What do you make of people like the Middlesbrough mayor and others who are now coming forward, and along with the rebels as well, talking about the nanny state 10 p.m. curfew, talking about measures being imposed from nationally in terms of local areas, in terms of not actually what they've asked for. Do you think that there is now something of a mood change from the British people and their representatives in terms of what people will put up with regards to lockdown?
Well, I think there's a mood change. I mean, I wouldn't go with the mayor of Middlesbrough. I think he's unwise to sort of effectively talk about breaking the law.
He was categorically clear he would not break the law.
Right. Okay. Well, then good. I mean, because that's very important. To coin somebody else's phrase, we are all in this together. So we've got to get it right. And so public officials have got to do the right thing. Look, of course, there's a great deal of irritation. I mean, I think one of the most interesting comments in the Commons yesterday to Hancock was from Greg Clark. Now, I think you know Greg Clark. He's an incredibly reasonable, excessively reasonable person, really. He's one of these people who's so nice, And he's turning around saying, where's the evidence for this 10 o'clock curfew, And we have for 6 months been basically accepting that the government knows best. Never a viewpoint I've ever subscribed to, but nevertheless, we have been for 6 months accepting they know best. And of course, over the course of that 6 months, they've had to reverse their line about a dozen times. Why? Because they didn't know best, because they hadn't done the science, because they hadn't thought it through properly, for whatever reasons. And what you're going to see now, and partly as a result of the rebellion in the last week, is you're going to see government having to justify much more. And you're going to see a very sceptical public saying, why? More and more and more. Why? And that will deliver better government, and we'll get a better outcome. We'll have less chance of another surge and less chance of another lockdown because we're doing it properly. Ministers don't know best. Whitehall, frankly, as a decision-making organisation, is not that great. And what's going to happen now is Parliament's going to force the government to justify things. That's for everybody's good, because it means we'll get better outcome and also less damage.
David Davis, always a pleasure to speak to yourself, former Brexit Secretary, Conservative MP. Thank you very much indeed.